one of the strongest symbols of wisdom and solitude in art history, Caravaggio's Saint Jerome. There are certain paintings in art history that do not merely depict a religious figure, but also capture humanity's deepest existential questions. Caravaggio's Saint Jerome writing, painted between 1605 to 1606, is precisely such a masterpiece. Let's take a closer look at this work. Baroque art was a movement that profoundly influenced European culture from the late 16th century to the mid-18th century. The term Baroque, derived etymologically from the Portuguese word barroco, meaning irregular pearl, reflects a criticism of the Renaissance ideal of order and perfection. In contrast to the measured, balanced and symmetrical compositions that dominated the Renaissance, Baroque painting presented a more dynamic, emotional and theatrical structure that drew the viewer into the scene. During this period, the use of light and shadow reached its peak, creating a dramatic and emotional impact on the audience. These powerful aspects of Baroque art can be seen most strikingly in the works of two artists, Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio and Rembrandt van Rijn. Both artists used light not merely as a tool for illumination, but as an element that strengthened the narrative. However, Caravaggio stands out as one of the pioneers of this approach. Caravaggio directed light with extraordinary mastery to highlight the hierarchy among figures and to emphasize the essence of the narrative. By often choosing a dark background in his works, he allowed the figures to stand out in the light, intensifying the dramatic effect. This technique draws the viewer into the painting, transforming them from a mere observer into a participant in the scene. In Caravaggio's paintings, the source, intensity, and direction of the light are easily discernible, which enhances the understanding of the composition both technically and emotionally. One of the artist's distinctive features was his ability to go beyond the norms of his time and to address themes that were often ignored or considered inappropriate. By boldly depicting scenes of murder, suffering, violence, and ugliness, he created a shocking impact on the viewer and compelled them to reflect. Caravaggio's unconventional approach not only produced a dramatic atmosphere, but also demonstrated that art could transcend conventions and offer new perspectives. Caravaggio's innovative understanding of light and shadow extended beyond his own era and continued to influence later centuries. Artists such as Rembrandt, Georges de la Tour, and Velázquez adopted and developed this method in their own styles. In this way, Caravaggio became a figure who shaped the essential character of Baroque painting and left a lasting mark on the history of art. Now that we've understood Caravaggio's style, we can move on to the painting itself. So, who is Saint Jerome, the figure we see here? Jerome was a great scholar who lived in the 4th century and translated the Bible into Latin. This translation, known as the Vulgate, became one of the most important texts in the Christian world for centuries. Jerome was also known for his ascetic lifestyle. He withdrew into seclusion and dedicated his life to prayer and writing. When we look at the painting, we encounter the figure of an aged sage. His red robe symbolizes the authority of the church, while his bony, wrinkled face reflects the weariness of earthly life. The books before him represent the sacred texts, and the skull on the table reminds us of mortality, the necessity of contemplating death. With his dramatic use of light, Caravaggio brings Jerome's body into sharp focus, while immersing the background in total darkness. In doing so, he directs the viewer's attention to a single point, the man and the words he is writing, the skull as a memento mori symbol. The skull is a recurring symbol in Baroque art, known as memento mori, a reminder of death. In depiction of Saint Jerome, artists almost always included a skull beside him. This was no coincidence. The skull represents the inevitability of mortality and the constant reflection on the transience of life. Jerome's hand resting on the book symbolizes the bridge between wisdom and holiness, while the skull reminds us that even the wisest and most sacred lives are bound by death. In these paintings, he is never just a man writing. He embodies humanity's search for salvation and the unending contemplation of our own mortality. Caravaggio's Saint Jerome is not merely a religious figure, but also a universal human condition. Wisdom, solitude, and the search for meaning in the face of death. The reason this painting still evokes such powerful emotions today lies precisely in that. This work by Caravaggio reveals the dramatic expression of the Baroque period in its purest form. The weariness on Saint Jerome's face, the skull on the table, and the books all convey a message. Life is fleeting, but wisdom and thought endure. So, what do you think is the most powerful detail in this painting? Is it the skull, Jerome's contemplative gaze, or the way the light cuts through the darkness to focus solely on him? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments.